one of the country's most contentious U.S. Senate races right here in Mississippi. Cindy Hyde-Smith, Mike Espy. They are political opposites. So where do they stand on the issues that matter most to the voters? Tonight, from WJTV 12 News, your local election headquarters, one-on-one with candidate Mike Espy. Good evening and welcome to the second of two 30-minute interviews with two leading U.S. Senate candidates. Well, last week we spoke with incumbent Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Tonight, we are talking with Democratic Senate candidate Mike Espy. Good evening and thank you for joining us, Mr. Espy.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to you. Thanks, Channel 12, for doing this.
Well, let's get started.
All right.
Past statements and past controversies are a big part of this Senate race.
Sure.
We want to start by looking at what you call a terrible time. In 1994, when you were Agricultural Secretary for the Clinton administration, you resigned after being indicted for allegedly accepting personal gifts from food companies that you regulated. You were acquitted of 30 corruption charges. One of those companies, Tyson Foods, pleaded guilty and had to pay several $1 billion in fines. If you are elected senator, you will likely be in a position where you will be offered gifts. How do you assure Mississippians you will not be caught up in this type of scandal again?
All right. Byron, thanks for the question. I'm going to answer it, but before I do, I want to remind everyone who I'm running against. I'm running against Cindy Hyde-Smith, voted by Vanderbilt University and the University of Virginia, ranked as the most ineffective senator in the United States. Of all 100, she's ranked as the least effective senator because she's passed no bills, she's had no town halls, she won't debate her opponents, and the thing she says, she's an anachronism, a throwback to the past. She's hurting our state. We need to move on from Cindy Hyde-Smith and move on to Mike Espy, someone who will push this state on into the third decade of the 21st century. That's why I'm running for Senate, to lift incomes, to make sure we cover all of those with pre-existing illnesses, to make sure we can continue the ACA and just lift this state in our image, and that's why I'm running. Now, to your question. It was a terrible time for me. Can I use the word bull crap on Channel 12? A bunch of bull crap, political bull crap that I was caught in. I stood up to the bully. I defended these accusations. I said always that they were untrue and unfair, and I was proven correct. You know, after a 7-week trial, the jury exonerated me completely, and then I went into the jury room, Byron. Some of them were laughing, some of them were crying, and they told me it was the most ridiculous thing they had ever seen, sitting through 7 weeks with 7 witnesses against me that we just decimated. Last thing about this is I can answer your question. I'd rather people go to Supreme Court records. There's a case called United States versus Sun Diamond. And Justice Antonin Scalia wrote the opinion for the unanimous court. And basically, the sum total of it, he said that Mike Espy should have never been charged. These are ridiculous, trivial charges, and it should never ever happen. This is Justice Antonin Scalia writing for the 9-0 court in favor of Mike Espy. So I went through that, but I stood up to the bully because the bully defamed me, said I did things I didn't do. That's why I can be a good senator for Mississippi. Mississippi is defamed. Bad things are said about our state all the time. And so I've been through this. I know how to stand up to the bully. I know how to beat the bully, and I will do this. So it was bull crap, but most of it, if I had any problem, it was the impression of impropriety. So you have impropriety and then the impression of impropriety. I would just say I accept responsibility for creating incidents that look like the impression of impropriety. So when I go up to the U.S. Senate, I'll abide by the highest ethical standards. You know, if I go to a football game with someone, I'll pay for that ticket. And that was the issue in this case. They took football tickets and they reduced these to felonies. And if you read that opinion, Justice Antonin Scalia made an analogy. He said, if a president of the United States goes to a school, this is exactly in the opinion, and makes a speech, and then the principal of that school gives him a jersey with number 1 on it, and he accepts the jersey, has the president of the United States committed a crime? He says, absolutely not, and neither did Mike Espy.
The second time that you have run for this seat, if you lose this time around, does this end your political career?
I'm running to be the senator of Mississippi at a time like this where we're in a pandemic, where people are unemployed, where people are trying to make ends meet. I have been in the Congress. I have been in the cabinet. I am experienced. I'm independent. I know how to work across the aisle. I'm a Democrat, but I'm more a moderate or independent Democrat. I've worked with Republicans like Thad Cochran and conservative senators like John Stennis. I've worked with Ronald Reagan to pass a bill when I was a freshman. I'm 66 now, but when I was a freshman, I was 30. And I didn't believe that freshmen should be seen and not heard. So Byron, I said, what can I do right away to make an impact? So I wrote a bill called the Lower Mississippi Delta Development Bill to lift up our region from southern Illinois to northern Louisiana, economic development bill. I went to Jamie Whitten, who was appropriations chairman. He funded my bill. The bill passed the House of Representatives. I went over to the Senate, Byron. I got Senator Cochran, Senator Stennis to get on my bill, because I don't believe that Democrats have all the best ideas or Republicans have all the worst ideas. I'm looking for the better ideas. So mine was a good idea. I went over, even as a freshman, even as a Democrat, I lobbied my bill to the Republicans in the Senate. They passed my bill. And then I went to the White House. I got Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, to sign my bill. It became law, and remnants of that law are still in effect today. So what I'm saying to you is that I'm trying to meet the moment. Mississippi is last. We're less, and our people are just, unfortunately, having to put up with being least on every index. All the good indexes we're at the bottom, all the bad indexes we're at the top. Last in healthcare, last in education, last in job opportunities, last. I'm tired of it. So then I was 30, I did something about it. I'm 66 now. Don't you know I'm gonna do something about it? So I'm hoping to win. I'm not looking at losing. We're doing very well now, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I know that I'm a Mississippian through and through, born and raised here, became a member of Congress, the first African-American since Reconstruction, won in 1986 from a district that was not majority black. I got black votes like 90%, and white votes back then about 8%. That was enough to win. And that time, those farmers were in a pickle like we are now with the pandemic. I told those farmers, if you trust me, if you rely on me, I'm gonna study your situation. If you're bankrupt, I'm gonna help you. Just let me go and let me represent you in the House of Representatives. And they did. And so now I'm telling the folks of Mississippi, we're in a pandemic. You know, we need more CARES Act money. We need more unemployment money. We need someone who knows that system, who's experienced, who can't be ignored like Cindy Hyde-Smith. Do you know they call her the hanging senator? When she's walking through the halls of the Senate, her fellow senators snicker behind her back. They call her the hanging senator because of her intemperate remarks in the last cycle. So that's who we have. I want to lift this state. I want to be the best senator we've ever had in this state. I'll do that, but I need a chance to get there. So we're doing well. I expect to win. As to what I'm going to do if we lose, I will tell you this. People say, what have you been doing for the last 25 years since you left the cabinet seat? I'll tell you. Came back to Mississippi, and now I'm the chairman of a nonprofit. It's a $400 million nonprofit. I'm not going to name them because people who know my work, they already know the name, and I don't want to be askew with any FEC laws. But we work in Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Alabama to lift up the bottom third. We are a $400 million nonprofit now. So what do? We focus on the bottom third. Those who don't have homes or bad credit, we give them mortgages. And usually they are women head of a household. We work with Goldman Sachs to fund businesses. So if you have a good idea for a business that cash flows, that makes sense, there's a good opportunity that we're going to fund your business. We go into medically underserved areas, like in Fayette, where I cut a ribbon to a medical clinic because doctors weren't coming there. They had no prenatal care there. They had no doctors there hardly. And so we built a medical clinic with funds from the USDA and the Treasury Department, a $5 million medical clinic. We cut the ribbon. And those in Mississippi with health issues without fresh fruit and vegetable grocery stores, They call them food deserts. We go in, Byron, we build grocery store. So what I've been doing since my cabinet days, now I'm gray and not as young as I used to be, I say, how can I make a contribution? So this board is volunteer. I've never been paid to be on this board. I've served on it for the last 25 years, and now they've made me the chairman. So I'll go back and remain the chairman, I guess. But it's all about what you can do to lift up Mississippi, to lift up the bottom third, to lift up our economy, to lift up our income, to give people more aspiration. We put credit unions in public schools right here in Jackson. You can go to West Jackson, you'll see this particular credit union, and the students put on our green t-shirts. We teach them how to take deposits from their teachers. Now, I'm talking about high school students. And so I told them when I cut that ribbon, all right, you're gonna graduate, hopefully go to college and go into the world. Now you have something in your brain, but also something in your pocket.
Let's talk a little bit about your campaign here. You launched your campaign last November, but it was only the last month that the National Democratic Party has committed money and resources to your campaign. The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee donated to 12 other campaigns, including Doug Jones in Alabama and Adrian Perkins in Louisiana, both huge underdogs, before committing its maximum donation. What does it tell you that the National Democratic Party did not support your bid early on?
Mississippi's always last. I've said it before, we always last, we get least. People are having to do with less. So I wasn't surprised. It also happened when I ran in 1986. It said, oh, this district, this guy's 29 years old, he's running, he can't win in the district that was not majority black, but we did. I won the primary, I defeated a Republican incumbent, like I'm gonna do here in 2 weeks. And then then the notice comes. So I just tell everybody, Mississippi's always overlooked. I just tell everybody, watch us, because we're gonna do that. It's almost like a catch-22, Byron. They ignore you until you can prove your own viability. It's hard to prove your own viability if they ignore you. Here in Mississippi, we're a beautiful state, we're a great state, but we're a poor state. And our population of 3 million, 20% of them are impoverished. And within that 20%, 6% of them are in a category they call persistent poverty. 3 decades desperately poor. They don't have 5 cents to give me, understand that. So I had to scream about this. Why are you not supporting this candidate who 19 months ago almost won? Why are you not supporting this candidate who got almost 47% of the vote, 99% African-American vote in Jackson, 94% black vote in the rural area, 18% white vote? People say, well, that's great. It's not great, because whether you're white or black, I'm gonna be your senator. Available, accessible, uplifting you, irrespective of your race, your gender, income, sexual orientation. I don't care. I'll be the senator for everyone. So I tell my Democratic friends in Washington, why are you doing this? So I will tell you that they've seen polling, and we are doing well, and now they're coming around. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So I've had to scream about this. They heard these screams, they reversed their position, and now we are doing well. But we're not waiting on that. We've done really well with money. If you look at my FEC reports, we beat Cindy Hyde-Smith in the third quarter, I think about 5 times. In the second quarter, 3 times. They're not giving to her because she relies on corporate PACs. The corporate PACs are shunning her now because what she said before about public hanging and voter suppression. They're not giving to her now because these corporate PACs know that her impertinent statements, her foolish statements, don't align with their corporate values. That's why they look at her now as a senator, and they're not giving to her because she's gonna hurt their company as much as she's hurting our state. Our state has an image issue. You don't want to re-elect a senator that talks about public hangings. You don't want to elect a senator that jokes about voter suppression. And I'll ask her even now, Cindy, when you got out of that bus and you joked about voter suppression, you said, maybe we ought to make it more difficult for those students at the other universities to vote. But you never said who they were. You never said the colleges that you were mentioning. Is it Jackson State? Is it Alcorn? Is it Valley? You never said. So, I'm calling you today. You said you're going to make it more difficult for the students at the other universities to vote. Who are they?
Some Democrats believe that the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett is cause for stacking the Supreme Court or adding more justices should Joe Biden be elected president. Do you support that idea, yes or no?
I do not support court packing. Tell you why. I do not. I've been busy. I've not watched a lot of the Senate judiciary confirmations. I think Judge Barrett, I think soon to be Justice Barrett, seems to me to be brilliant woman. And by all looks of it, she'll be the ninth justice. So I've heard this about court packing going to, if you pack it, you have to make it an odd number and you have to put 2 more in. So if it gets, it's 9 now, some want to go to 11. If the court flips back to correct what the other group did, they want to go to 15 or 17 or 19, and it's got to stop somewhere. So I'm going to say no. I'm not in favor of court packing. And again, I'll tell you why. I love Justice Ginsburg. She said 2 things. Number 1, she said, my dying wish is that my successor not be named until the next president has been inaugurated. Well, now we know that Mitch McConnell and Cindy Hyde-Smith, they're just blowing through all of this because they want Justice Barrett to be on the court by November 10th when there's a bullseye on the Affordable Care Act. They want to stop the Affordable Care Act. They want to make it to terminate the ability of people with pre-existing illnesses to be covered. They want to stop the ability of kids age 26 to be on their parents' policies. They want to close these rural hospitals. That's why they want her on the bench. But she's going to be there. But she also said, Justice Ginsburg said, in answer to this question, should we have more than 9? She said no, because 9 is a good number. 9 is a decent number where they could go in the back room and decide cases. 9 is a good number, and I agree with her. So 9 is a good number. I'm always willing to listen to the other argument, but as far as I'm concerned, if I'm in the Senate, I want to hold it at 9, not 11, not 13, not 15. So where does it end? I want to stop at 9.
Speaking of Obamacare, what you talked about, Obamacare premiums skyrocketed between 2016 and 2018, but have fallen the past 3 years. However, premiums remain expensive for people who don't qualify for subsidies. In 2014, the average premium for a family of 4 on the benchmark silver plan was just under $800. Next year, it's $1,486. That's before any subsidies. Does Obamacare still work for the middle class? And what specifically will you do to ensure premiums are affordable?
First of all, I like competition. That's why I'm not for Medicare for all. I'm not for a single payer. I like competition because if you already have your doctor, you like it. If you already have your medical policy, you like it, keep it. What I want to do is focus on the bottom third because that's Mississippi. We're a poor state with a lot of poor people who cannot afford doctor visits. They're so afraid to go to the doctor. That's why we're so pretty bad when it comes to healthcare outcomes. Last, in fact, we're number 51. We're worse than this year for Columbia. So we have cancer, heart disease, hypertension, obesity. We have comorbidity. That's why this virus is raging through Mississippi. All of our people already have predispositions for comorbidities. So I want Medicaid expansion to take care of the lower income folks because when they get the ability to have medical insurance, 90% of it that'll be paid by the federal government, then they have the confidence of going to the doctor when they have an ache or pain, and that will lower the cost of prescription drugs. That will lower the cost of outlays in the state of Mississippi. So I'm worried about the lower 1/3. I believe in Medicaid expansion, continuation of the Affordable Care Act. I want to be the healthcare senator for Mississippi, and that is why I am running.
But Medicare for all is something that you oppose.
I do oppose that, always have, because I like competition. I was a Secretary of Agriculture, right? And in that role, I went all around the world, negotiating multilateral treaties for Mississippi farmers and American farmers to send their crops to emerging and growing markets. I like competition. as long as it's fair. If it's not fair, I'm against it. That's why I don't like tariffs. Tariffs are distorting. Tariffs increase the cost of goods, and it hurts us like we're being hurt now in China with our losing our soybean markets to Brazil. So I like fairness. As long as the rules are fair, I'm an American, I'm a Mississippian, I'm not afraid to compete with anyone in the world. As long as the rules are fair, I'm for fairness. That's why I'm not for single payer Medicare for all. I like fairness, I like competition. I want to be able, when we buy drugs, did you know that, I read this, HHS now, when it comes to Medicare Part D prescription drugs, they cannot negotiate the price of drugs with the pharmaceutical company. Listen now, Health and Human Services, they're responsible for 40% of the purchases of drugs in the United States. What tremendous leverage they have. They can't use it because the pharmaceutical lobbyists said, we will prohibit you from negotiating down the cost of prescription drugs. That's ridiculous. 40% of the cost of a market purchase, we're prohibited from negotiating the drug prices, which is why they're so high. If I'm senator, I'm gonna go right in there and say, we want competition for the 40% of the market. We want to use our leverage as a volume purchaser to reduce this. I wanna go to China directly, past the middlemen, past the ones that get all the commissions, say, look, we wanna buy drugs from you since you're the originator of many of them. And I wanna say, look, if it's safe and effective, we wanna buy from you directly. I wanna go to Canada and do the same thing. Here's the last thing I want to say on prescription drugs. Did you know, because I didn't know until I started reading this, that when you have a brand drug and then a generic drug does the same thing, has the same impact as the brand name. Here's the problem. The pharmaceutical companies have so much money that when their licenses are about to expire, and they know that this will give the generic pharmaceutical operator a chance to enter the market and decimate them because the cost will be lower, they go right over there to the generic brand and say, we're gonna pay you not to come to market. I want competition. I'm gonna be that senator. I'm gonna stand up to the bullies. I'm gonna stand up to the pharmaceutical markets. I'm gonna stand up for the image of this state. I'm gonna be the best senator we've ever had.
All right, well, we're gonna continue our conversation with Mike Espy when we come right back. Your station, your vote, your election headquarters. Welcome back to our one-on-one interview with candidate Mike Espy on WJTV 12 News. And welcome back. We are talking one-on-one with Democratic Senate candidate Mike Espy. COVID-19 cases are surging right around the country and here in Mississippi, and the governor has brought back mask mandates in several counties. But should masks be mandated nationwide?
COVID is here. It is not a hoax. It's not something that's gonna mysteriously disappear. And until we get a vaccine, the only way we can really protect ourselves is through a mask, Byron. My mask protects you, and your mask protects me. So I wish that there had been a mandate. I really wish so. We can't. I don't know how to enforce it. Certainly, I wouldn't have any penalties for those who would overlook it. But it is a signal from the federal government that this thing is serious. The virus is conveyed through airborne particles, and the only way we can stop it is with this tighter facial covering. I know it's inconvenient. Mississippi is hot and it's uncomfortable, but it's the only thing that protects us until we get a vaccine. So I'm gonna follow Dr. Fauci. He says wear the mask, all right? And Dr. Birx and Dr. Dobbs here in Mississippi, I think he's excellent. And all the good first responders at UMC, they say wear the mask. So I'm gonna wear the mask, I'm gonna socially distance, and I believe it should have been mandatory. I believe so, because when it was, we saw the virus incidents of infections go down, and now it's spiking because the mandate has been lifted here in Mississippi, except with regard to certain counties, and now we see it spiking again, right? So I think we become numb to this, but I'm sorry about that, but this thing is serious. Wear the mask, I believe it should have been mandatory, but now that a horse is out of the barn, it's gone. So now I don't think we should impose it now, but just be like me, wear the mask. It protects you, and wear it for me because I'm 66.
It is predicted that a vaccine could be ready as early as the end of this year. And the nation's top infectious disease expert, you mentioned Dr. Fauci, says that he is cautiously optimistic that one could be deemed safe and effective by November or December.
Yeah.
Once a vaccine is approved and ready for widespread distribution, will you take it?
Of course, yeah. Especially if Dr. Fauci says it. I mean, this guy should get every prize that we could ever give in America. He's telling the truth. He said this thing is real. He told us how to ward it off. He told us how to suppress it, and we're just not following his advice. President Trump isn't following it. Senator Hyde isn't following it. Remember, Senator Hyde said it's gonna be over in February. She said 2 weeks. So she lied to us. She's not leading us. And I wanna just say, I'm not a doctor. So as someone who is not a doctor, I'm gonna follow the doctor's advice. Dr. Fauci, if he says the vaccine is coming in tomorrow, right? If he said it, and all I have to ask 2 questions. Is it safe? Is it effective? If he tells me yes, I'll take it tomorrow.
Would you support making a COVID-19 vaccine part of the vaccination regimen that all school children must take it before they return to school?
Not mandatory, because I can't tell a parent where to send their child, really. If you want to send your child to public school, private school, parochial school, charter school, that's up to you. You know what's best for your child. And if you don't want your child to take that vaccine, we can't make you. Nobody's gonna come to your house and make your child do anything. But I don't think that child should go to school, because then that would be maybe a risk of infecting everyone else who took the vaccine. So I want to make it available, but not mandatory.
Do you support the reallocation of resources for law enforcement, or as it's been termed, defunding the police?
I never would support defunding the police. I'm on record as saying that. I've got policemen in my own family, all right? No, I want to help the police. I think the police should fight crime, all right? We hire them, we pay them to fight crime and not to be social workers. And I say this for an example. If there's a domestic situation, someone calls 911, police show up, they listen to both sides, and it's not a life-threatening situation. There's no gun, no knives, there's no harm or physical injury. Right then, Byron, the police need to call the social workers. They need to call the marital counselors. They need to say, come on, you got this, and we're gonna go and fight crime. So no, I wanna augment the police. I don't wanna take any money from them. I do not want to defund them at all. I think we need to help them. So I guess I wanna reform the police. I wanna augment them and bring people into their orbit who are mental health counselors, who are social workers, to free them to fight crime. And I don't want to take a cent from them. I want to add money to what they could do and resources.
Well, the president said that, recently said that he would move to have Antifa and the KKK branded as terrorist organizations. Do you feel people who protest under the Antifa banner be branded as terrorists?
I will condemn any violent protest. I will condemn anyone who believes they can protest by burning, becoming arsonists or looters or threatening public buildings. That is wrong. Now, I believe in peaceful protest. It's a constitutional right to protest. First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to redress your grievances. I'm all for that. So as long as it's peaceful, then go for it. But once you cross that line and you start to threaten public buildings, burn, I'm against that. I don't care if it's Antifa or whomever is wrong. They need to be condemned, they need to be prosecuted. And I'm for peaceful protests only, like what happened here in Jackson. Senator Hyde Smith, on your program last week, I saw it. And you asked a question like this, and she said there aren't any peaceful protests. She's wrong again. I participated in July in the Black Lives Matter march downtown Jackson. They expected 200 participants. Byron, there were 3,000. 3,000. I was there with my wife and my 2 sons. It was peaceful. Everyone had on a mask. It was hard to distance, but everyone had on a mask. There was water there. They had paramedics there because it was very hot. Certain people fainted. And it was peaceful. It was lovely. And it was a true example of the redress of our grievances to the public. So she's wrong again. Whenever she opens her mouth, something wrong comes out. You know, that's why they call her the hanging senator. Her image as a senator is harming our image as a state. She needs to be just not reelected. We need to move on. We need to close that chapter, move on to a new day, and I'm that representative. So as long as the protests are peaceful, like the one in Jackson, I'm all for it. Once you cross that line, start threatening property or burning buildings, public or private, I'm not on your team anymore.
Moving on to the question of gun control. Let's look at your past statements.
Yep.
In October of 2018, you told the Jackson Free Press, quote, "I believe in the Second Amendment, but things have changed," adding, "I didn't leave the NRA left me." You also said no one declared a danger to himself or people under 21 should have access to assault weapons.
Yep.
Do you favor further restrictions?
I'm an advocate of the Second Amendment. I'm an advocate of the right to bear arms, always have been, I am today. I'll let you in on something most people don't know. I was a rifle instructor. When I was in college, I was part of a rifle and pistol club, and I became, I guess, so proficient in 22 rifles that I would go to the basement of the NRA headquarters when I was a freshman at Howard University, you know, in the 1970s. And I'd show them my membership card. I'd go there and I'd shoot targets all afternoon long, became quite good at it. And so here in Jackson recently, I taught my wife and my son how to shoot on Southwest Jackson, you know, target shooting at Southwest Jackson is closed down. So if we can safely handle firearms, that's great. I'll tell you something else you may not know. If you go to Mississippi State right now and go upstairs to the library, you go to the Mike Espy archives. They've got me there with Senator Stennis and Senator Montgomery and Mike Espy. My papers are there. There's a silver case that if you open it, you'll see a silver rifle given to me in 1988 by the National Rifle Association in California for my votes on behalf of the right to own guns. So when I made that statement that the NRA left me, that's what I mean. I was an NRA member. I went to the rifle range for years and years, and they gave me their greatest award. The person that got the award right before me was a person that played God, you know? And we said, remove my cold dead hands from this rifle. All right, he got that before me. So I'm saying they've changed. They're no longer for the hunter. They're no longer for the gun enthusiasts, you know. They're now for the gun manufacturers. They just want to make a profit. Their NRA now is the most corrupt organization I've ever seen. They're giving money for huge salaries for buying a home, for someone to buy suits. And it's not like what it was. They've distorted the premise of the organization, so they've moved beyond me. I believe now in common sense reforms. I do believe that we need background checks. I do believe that if you cannot get on an airplane because there's a complication in your history, maybe you shouldn't own a gun. I believe that if you've been adjudged as a danger to yourself or others, and a court can judge this, if you're a danger to yourself or others, if you're in danger of hacking your mother, right? You know, going into schools and shooting little children because of some mental issue you have, you shouldn't own a gun. So, and all that can be done quite simply with a background check. So I am for reasonable background checks. I am not for the onerous NRA that's just for the gun manufacturers wanting to sell more guns instead of promoting gun safety issues. That's what I'm for. And that's why I said they've left me. I used to be with them. I've got that award. Charlton Heston is who I'm thinking about. Charlton Heston is the one that got that award before me. So I've got the Charlton Heston gun, and it's at Mississippi State right now today. So I've been with NRA. I'm not with them anymore because they've morphed into something I don't even recognize.
All right, one last question here. Medical marijuana is on the November ballot here in Mississippi. Do you support either Initiative 65 or 65A, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state of Mississippi?
We support 65 because, you know, it's medical marijuana. So I had chronic asthma until I was age 12, I almost died from it. So anything that reduces pain and suffering, you know, and as I've read, medical marijuana will reduce Parkinson's disease and certain respiratory illnesses. If that's the case, yes. I'm for anything that's going to help Mississippians alleviate their suffering. That is mostly bringing Medicaid expansion to Mississippi, because the day we do it, 250,000 Mississippians will now have the benefit of medical insurance. They'll go and get those doctor visits in. They'll go to their primary health care provider, and they'll be able to pay that bill, so the rural hospital will not close. So many have closed because of uncompensated care. Medicaid expansion will do this. I'm for it. So yes, 65 is what I'm for, because for what I'm reading, it will alleviate pain and suffering. Right. I want to be the healthcare senator for Mississippi. That's why I'm running. I'm running against somebody that voted 6 times against coverage for pre-existing illness, someone who's lied about her record with CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program. She said she voted for it. Dad Cochran voted for that. We called her on it. She took it down.
All right, thank you, Mike Espy, for joining us and talking with us this evening. And stay tuned, we've assembled a panel to talk about what we've just heard this evening. Much more after this break. Welcome back to talk about what we just heard from Mike Espy. We put together a panel, and 12 News senior political correspondent Gerald Harris is here. And joining us is Dr. Nathan Schrader, director of the American Studies Department at Millsaps College, and via Zoom, Frank Corder, managing editor for Y'all Politics. Well, Cindy Hyde-Smith has said Mike Espy is too corrupt for Mississippi. We asked him about his indictment and acquittal, and here was his response.
It was bull crap, but most of it, if I had any problem, it was the impression of impropriety. So you have impropriety and then the impression of impropriety. I would just say I accept responsibility for creating incidents that look like the impression of impropriety. So when I go up to the U.S. Senate, I'll abide by the highest ethical standards.
And Frank, Mike Espy has been asked this question many times. Do you think he said enough to reassure Mississippi voters?
Well, that's the question, Gerald, is, the history that he had during that Clinton era of what he calls a bunch of political bullcrap still weighs down his campaign today. It was encouraging to hear him take ownership of creating an environment that caused some of these improprieties and these questions of impropriety to exist. My concern with Mr. Espy is if he is in a position of power, like in the U.S. Senate, will this continue? Will he continue to have ways to influence people, if you will, just like we are seeing on the national stage now with Joe Biden?
Dr. Schrader, did Mr. Espy do enough to reassure Mississippi voters?
Look, I think that he did, but I would say that it was a very lengthy response. This is something that Secretary Espy's been addressing on the campaign trail during this campaign and also addressed during the 2018 special election. I think that entire response could be truncated into about a 15-second answer. I said that I was innocent of these charges, and a jury agreed with me and acquitted me of them. I think that's the end of it. It took a little too long to build up the explanation as to what happened and where things stand now. But I do agree with Frank, however, that it was good for him to address this, because it has been a nagging campaign issue, because this is what the Hyde-Smith campaign of the Republicans have been trying to use against him now over the past couple of weeks. So he had to say something. I would just say it can be reduced down very much from what we heard there today.
The Supreme Court is front and center, with Amy Coney Barrett expected to be voted to be confirmed next week. Mike Espy didn't offer any criticism of Judge Barrett, and when it comes to court stacking, he was adamant in his opposition. Take a listen.
She also said, Justice Ginsburg said, in answer to this question, should we have more than 9? She said no, because 9 is a good number. 9 is a decent number where they could go in the back room and decide cases. 9 is a good number. And I agree with her. So 9 is a good number. I'm always willing to listen to the other argument. But as far as I'm concerned, if I'm in the Senate, I want to hold it at 9.
Nathan, Mike Espy is not falling in line with a lot of the progressive Democrats out there. He hasn't run away from the Democratic Party, but do you think this decision by him change the makeup of the court, him not wanting to do it?
Well, I actually would say that his position today, that he articulated today on the court packing question, shows that he's very much in line with the Democratic Party in general. There are very few people that I've heard from, except for the far left of the Democratic Party, who are advocating for a court packing plan of some sort. And I actually think that what Mike Espy did here was he helped to demonstrate the fact that he is running, as he said earlier, an independent Democrat. Someone who's certainly more down the middle than the very progressive wing of the Democratic Party, like AOC and some of the others that you might have encountered in Washington. So I think that Mike Espy is trying to establish himself here as a realist by acknowledging that it's highly likely that Judge Amy Barrett Coney will be confirmed to the courts, but also in pushing back against that progressive idea of packing the Supreme Court, which, by the way, seems to be in line with what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are saying, because they've not endorsed that idea either.
Frank, anything about that exchange surprise you at all?
Well, it's good to hear that Secretary Espy would articulate that, as Dr. Schrader said. Perhaps he needs to talk with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris about how to answer that question, because they have kind of ran from that question on a number of occasions. I would just say that we're in Mississippi. We are a red state, a conservative state. For him to get any crossover vote, this topic is a hot topic, and it's one that is polling in this state to the level of that they do not want it. Voters here do not want court packing in Mississippi. So I would expect Secretary Espy to be on that side of this issue, especially 2 weeks out from this election.
Well, Gerald, this is a rematch, and do you feel how do you feel most voters, do they think they have their minds made up already, or do you think there's some swing voters out there?
Well, I absolutely think that everyone has their mind made up 2 weeks out, because you do have clear differences, and we've been through this before, 2018. So I think at this point for both candidates, it's about turnout and going to those specific areas, trying to get out those voters that Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith says that she's going after, and what former Secretary Espy is going after. It's about turnout at this point. I think people have decided.
Well, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith talked a lot about her support of the Second Amendment, and we asked Mike Espy about his stance on gun control, as he says, the NRA left me. Take a listen.
I believe now in common sense reforms. I do believe that we need background checks. I do believe that if you cannot get on an airplane because there's a complication in your history, maybe you shouldn't own a gun. I believe that if you've been adjudged as a danger to yourself or others, and a court can judge this, if you're a danger to yourself or others, if you're in danger of hacking your mother, right? You know, going into schools and shooting little children because of some mental issue you have, you shouldn't own a gun.
Frank, your thoughts on Espy's stance on gun control?
Well, Byron, I thought it was kind of interesting that he called the NRA, quote, the most corrupt organization out there. That was kind of strange. But the sheer fact of the matter is that mental health background checks have been endorsed even by President Trump. I don't think anyone's questioning that. But if he is elected to the Senate and Chuck Schumer is the majority leader, if the Democrats do win, you can expect tighter gun control laws in this country. And Mike Espy will be put on the spot to see whether or not he is pro-Second Amendment, as he says. And I fully expect him, unless Chuck Schumer grants him otherwise, to vote right along with the Democrat Party.
And Dr. Schrader, your response to his gun control?
Well, look, I am a former member of the National Rifle Association. I completely what Mike Espy said, that the NRA long ago left people like Mike Espy and I, who both can identify as being very much pro-Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, but the NRA has taken some extremely radical and far-out positions over the past couple of decades, and they're becoming increasingly radical in their belief system. And I think Mike Espy is right to explain in this interview that he supports these common-sense mainstream reforms that the majority of Mississippians support too. And we've seen that backed up up with our Millsap State of the State polling as well, that Mississippians are, nobody's favor of gun bans and confiscations. No one is for that, but Mississippians are in favor of common sense reforms like the one Mike Espy said. In fact, or some of the ones Mike Espy said. In fact, a few years ago, nationwide, we were at over 93, 94% of Americans saying that they were in favor of universal mandatory background checks like what Mike Espy has endorsed here, that the NRA opposes, even though they once supported it. So I think Mike Espy's position here was very sound, and it very much was in with the mainstream alignment of most voters in the country, but especially voters here in Mississippi.
All right, we'll have much more with our panel when we come back after this break. We are back. 12 News' Gerald Harris is joining me, along with Millsaps College professor Dr. Nathan Schrader and Frank Corder from Y'all Politics.
Yeah, the last time we had a poll, it showed the race at 1%. Each of you tell me that this race will be close. And what did you not hear from Mike Espy that we should have heard today?
So I do agree that I think this is going to be a close race. I'm not exactly sure that I agree that this is a one-point race right now, but I think this is going to be a race that was considerably closer than it was a few years ago, where it was, what, 7 or 8 points difference. I think that the thing that I did not hear, if I had to pick that out from Mike Espy today, it was that there was a lot of opportunities where it took a long time to get to an answer in a couple of places, and I would have liked to have heard a little bit more of a discussion from him about education priorities, because I think that weighs so heavily here on the people of Mississippi, although he did tie that back into what some of the nonprofit work he's been doing in the previous few years. I also think he did a very good job talking about his relationship and positive working relationship in the past with people like Thad Cochran and Ronald Reagan, acknowledging that this is a Republican state. But so the other thing I think I would have liked to have heard from him is specific to Donald Trump. If President Donald Trump is reelected this year, how will he navigate working with a relationship with Donald Trump, who of course we know is very different from a Ronald Reagan or a Thad Cochran style Republican?
Frank, how close is this race, and what did you not hear that you would have liked to hear?
I don't see this race being that 1 point, just as Dr. Nathan Schrader just said. I still see this around the 6 to 8 point margin, just as it was in the 2018 cycle, if not greater, given the fact that Donald Trump is on the ballot. He's still very popular here in this state with voters. One of the things I didn't hear was about tax reform or tax increases, which is what his party is running on. Joe Biden has said that he supports repealing the Trump tax cuts. Mr. Espy has not addressed those any time at all. He has repeatedly rehashed or recycled that same 2018 narrative against Senator Hyde Smith. He calls her a throwback from the past, that that basically it seems to fit him more if you look at his record from having been in D.C. for a lot longer. She's the first female senator from the state, first female person to go to D.C. on behalf of this state, and has only been there for 2 years. He served a number of terms and in D.C. on the cabinet. So his talking points kind of don't hold water, and he's very loose with accusations, but very little on facts.
Frank, thank you. Some final thoughts when we come back. Some final thoughts, Gerald, what would you make from the interview?
Well, for the interview, I think that two things are going to be important for Mike Espy. One, turnout, and also split-ticking voters. Can he get Republicans that will vote for Donald Trump to also give him a chance? And also, he's going after the African-American vote in the Delta. He's spending time on the Gulf Coast. He's going to those places where in 2018 you didn't see Attorney General Jim Hood go to until very, very, very much to the last day, practically, to those areas. So it's going to be very important for Mike Espy to send his message out on a winning streak with turnout voting and also split-ticking voting.
All right. And we want to thanks to Mike Espy for joining us, also Dr. Nathan Schrader and Frank Corder. And if you missed any of tonight's special or last Friday night's interview with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, they are both available online at WJTV.com. For 12 News' Gerald Harris, I'm Byron Brown. 12 News at 10 is coming up next. Make it a good night, everyone.